All right. So I guess to start off, first off, hello. I am Master of Trash Gaming or Master of Gaming, or as you can refer to me in this video, Michael, which is my real name. As you can see here, I am Michael. Now, in this video, this is going to be different from everything else I've made. First off, sorry for the terrible camera quality. This is my laptop video recording, I guess. And sorry for the lighting. It's going to be awful as well. So, I want to first off start by saying that I was fired from Walmart. This company I have been working for almost 2.8 years. So pretty much almost 3 years. This November it was going to be my third year. And so first off, I started working when I was 15. I worked at Papa Murphy's Pizzeria, take and bake pizza, for a couple months until I turned 16. There I did dishes, occasionally prepped pizzas. Pretty much that was the gist of it. First job, did it. I feel like I did it surprisingly well. Maybe not so towards the end of it as I got to know people and became a bit more friendly and strayed away from doing the job that I originally was there for because like I didn't know anybody, so I was there and I was just keeping to myself. And so once I turned 16, I went over to Walmart. I started in November. It was like maybe November 6th ish. Could have been maybe towards more the end, but it was in November. And so I have reason to believe I was wrongfully fired. And so the reason I was fired was because of two incidents that were too close together, maybe about a month apart. The first incident was dealing with carts, and it was out when I was in the lot because as a front end associate, apparently you do everything on the front end along with cart pushing, which I had done cart pushing before. It's nothing new. And so I had gone out, and on that day, I had decided that anytime I had seen anybody with a cart and they were not putting it where they were supposed to, whether it was up in the rocks, whether it was in a parking spot, whether it was in, I guess, like the side or like in between carts, or it was in handicap spots in those little yellow zones, or parked up against the giant poles, or I guess medium sized poles that displayed the handicap signs. And so I had been going around and I was like, hey, you shouldn't be putting your cart here. This could cause problems. And I've been doing that all day. Obviously, nobody's going to be a fan of it being told, hey, you can't really be putting your cart there. I ended up putting all the carts away pretty much. Nobody really took their cart back, as you could expect. I'd suggest watching Cart Narcs because that is honestly kind of where I was like, this guy, we need him out here because people just don't like to put their carts away. And obviously, that can make it harder for the cart pushers. And so I had encountered, this was maybe towards like around the end of the day, not like dark, not fully dark yet, but like, starting to hit around maybe sundown, maybe an hour off of sundown. This was like maybe 2-ish months ago when this happened. And so I got up to this handicap spot, and there was this guy. He was getting ready to get in his car, and they had a cart. They were sending it up partially in the rocks, but also in that yellow area. And the yellow area, if you don't know, is for where people can open their doors freely. It's a space. So, like in your normal parking space, there's like no space in between you and the next car. But these little gaps are so you can get your wheelchairs out, or so you have space to open up your door fully. Because I have gone out and helped customers who are using our riding carts, or they're taking the shopping carts out and they need their door fully open to be able to get into the car. This isn't something that's super easy for them to do. A lot of them are a little bit rigid. They can't move as easily. So like whereas like I can open the door slightly, squeeze inside. If there's another car too close, that's super easy, but they cannot. And so obviously they need that space. And if there's a cart there, they can't open the door without smacking it or moving out of the way. And so I got up and I'm like, hey, you shouldn't be putting a car here. This can cause issues. And the woman on the passenger side immediately starts yelling, gets out, and starts recording. And the whole time she said I was discriminating and I was treating them differently. Now, at the end of the day, I was sitting there being calm, collected the whole time while she was just screaming her head off. Now, her significant other, her husband, I assume, was being calm, obviously still on her side, trying to defend the whole fact that they were leaving the cart there. They had made claims like maybe Walmart should make more of these spots or put the corrals closer. And what I had heard from the store manager and stuff is that the whole reason there aren't corrals in there is because they have to have a certain amount of space. Obviously, you can't be sticking a whole corral in there or moving it down. But even then, that's not going to stop people from leaving carts wherever they want to, because at the end of the day, some people are close to the corral, and yet they'll still leave the cart wherever they want. Now, I'm not saying that it's all, on handicapped people. Anyone and everyone does it, and I wasn't excluding or treating anyone differently. I wasn't picking out certain people. It was if I saw somebody doing it, I was saying something. At the end of the day, the cart went back to where it went, but when I had gone in to talk about that, it was maybe about 2 or 3 weeks later when the store manager had done something because he was on what I believe was vacation or he was off for that time period. And so when he got back, he had to deal with it. So through that, I was telling him that basically that she was recording. At least that's what everyone around me thought because there were other store people around towards the end of it, and we did think she was recording. At the end of the day, nobody saw anything posted, and so I'm guessing she didn't, which her husband probably told her, "Hey, we probably shouldn't be posting that. That might make you look a little bit crazy," because she was yelling the whole time. She wasn't calm at any point. It was yelling, and she had sprinted in at some point, or I guess trudged inside to get a manager, and she had made claims that her bones were that of like a 60-year-old, and she was like mid 30s maybe. And that was the first incident. Now, whether you think it's right or wrong to go out and obviously say, hey, you shouldn't be putting in carts, I wasn't forcing people, wasn't being violent about it, wasn't being rude, just saying, hey, shouldn't be doing that. Which I think anybody can do that, whether you work at Walmart or not, and people shouldn't get full on pissed over that. Now, as for the second incident, obviously, this happened recently, and this was like maybe a week or two ago when they had first recorded it, and then they had put me on about a week break along with the other associate involved due to investigation. I don't know what all was investigated, but in the end, I was fired anyways. But obviously, the reason being is because these two were a bit close. I don't know how much of a gap they would have had to have for it to have not been fired, but they were too close. And so this all started on a weekend when I received a message from a friend. I will post this up on the side somewhere here, and it will be slightly, I guess, blurred out the names because it was through Discord. And I will give you a second to obviously read that. So if you need to, pause so you don't have my talking in there. So basically, I received the message. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to do something because you don't get to treat a friend like that. And so I had gone in on a Sunday, and at some point I had taken my break. At this point, I went outside and I waited because this guy, he's a car pusher. And I already don't like car pushers. I've never liked car pushers because already from the start of working there, I've had to go out and push carts. It's not an everyday thing, but it was to the point to where they were like, you need carts done, send me out. Because I was willing to push carts. I put in effort. I wasn't sitting on my ass. And a lot of them do. We have caught Julian, which is the car pusher. We have caught him outside sitting for like 15 minutes, not doing his job. This is going to be one of the incidents I talk about later in the video. A lot of the people that I know there, I don't know all the names because obviously they've left my mind, but there are plenty of people that have just done nothing or have sat there and wasted time on the job. Whether these are big things or they slowly add up over time, I think that there are plenty of other people who can be fired who aren't fired. And so I already don't like the car pushers because obviously lazy. We've had a history of lazy car pushers. Our lot is quite bigger than most other lots. I visited a Walmart recently because we went shopping there because my sister wanted to find some clothing because our Walmart doesn't apparently have a good selection of clothing. In the end, she didn't buy anything from the other store, but the lot was significantly smaller. It was still on the big side, but it was smaller. And they had one car pusher out there who was using the mule when if I was out there, I could have easily done it normally. And I'm not saying I am the god of car pushing. There were other people who did push carts alongside me. But during the first and second years, I was mainly the one who did it. I was mainly the one to call. But during the third year, that is when we started getting some of the coworkers who were, I guess, male, who actually went out and did that. Why? Because they were asked to. They didn't say no. They didn't decline. They were basically asked, hey, let's go and push carts. But I'm straying off from the main topic. So I had gone out and I had decided I was going to confront him. He was walking up with another car pusher. He had his phone in his other hand, and I had lightly gone up and shoved his shoulder. This wasn't enough to knock him over. This wasn't enough. It was like, let's say you're walking the halls and someone shoulder checks you. That's basically it. He immediately got all huffy and mad over it. And he had stepped up onto the sidewalk and he had called me the N word. Already not okay. For, I guess, somewhat context, he is Mexican, I believe. I don't think he's black. Not that that's going to matter. I mean, a lot of people say the N word, whether it's on the internet or in real life, whether they're white or Hispanic or anything like that, they'll still say it. So, obviously, that's not going to matter if he would have said it anyways. So, like, whether if he was white or not, he probably would have still said it. But he had said that. And so we had stepped up onto the sidewalk, and the whole time he was yelling and saying, who do you think you are for touching me? What gives you the right to touch me? And that was basically the gist of his argument. While the whole time I was trying to say, you don't get to threaten women. You don't get to say you want to beat them. And that was around the whole thing. And at some point, we stepped out of the car garage, and he was taking off his vest, saying, "Let's go, let's fight." There was no fight at the end. At some point, the door greeter came out and had said, "Hey, all right, let's break it up." And at that point, walking away, I had flipped him off and I had called him the F word. Not fuck, the other F word. And so, while two things were said, not okay, obviously, it was on the job, not okay. I will say that I was on a paid break. It wasn't a lunch, so I wasn't off the clock, but it was a paid break. I don't know if that has anything that can change it at all. Obviously, it didn't because here I am. I'm fired. So, basically, went inside, ended up going home later that day, and that was about it. Now, I have heard that he is fired too. So, to that, I say hallelujah because it's deserved at this point. Let me give you some more I guess, lore to why, more reasons why I hate him, obviously. Car pusher. He's also a mooch. His girlfriend, who is the friend of my friend, had bought him a PS5. Now, I don't think your significant other should be buying you an expensive item, especially if you can't return the favor. And I don't think he's returned the favor because from what I've heard, his family situation is he has his siblings, his father's not in the picture, and he has his mother. I don't know how old his siblings are. I don't know what his mom does for a job, nor if she has a job. I would assume so because I don't know how many siblings they have, and obviously you need to have a job to take care of them. And so I'm assuming that's partially where all of his money goes. Now, I can't say for certain because obviously I don't know. But at some point, my friend had invited the two on a vacation because my friend and the girlfriend of Julian, they had been best friends for years. I don't know how long, but I know it's about the same friendship me and Not Famous have or Brian. We have been friends for a good couple of years, but I'm pretty sure they have been friends for longer. And so you can say they've been like best friends for practically life, maybe even half their lifetime. So that's obviously a long time to be friends with anyone. Like let's say like 8 years. That's quite a bit. And so she invited them to go on a vacation. Now, she had told me that they could have said no if they wanted to, and that if they were short on money, they didn't have to. And with Julian's situation, yes, she was partially short on money. And and in the message I showed, he had claimed that they did not want to go and that she basically forced them. And she had told me that they could have backed at any time. There was no forcing of that. Obviously, I can't say for certain because I wasn't there, but I'm going to take her word for it because why would she lie? Like, I get it. If you're friends with somebody, you have the right to say no. If you feel like you're obligated to be there when you shouldn't have to be there, then you don't have to. Like, there have been moments where, like, I've been invited to a camp out with Brian, and I've said no. But there are also moments when I've not because I have gone camping. I love camping. I find it to be fun. But also, I've had the recently more focused mindset on making gains. Has it worked? Partially, kind of clouds the mind once you get into working out. You're like, let me just, I have to have my protein, I have to have my calories. It sucks because right now I'm not really meeting that because my job was a convenient way to eat and stuff like that. But she had invited them and they had said yes in the end. They had gone. She ended up paying, my friend, she had ended up paying for the room that they were staying in because he did not have enough money to pay. She had said that they basically just wanted to sit in the room and do nothing the whole trip. I can't say for sure. Wasn't there, obviously, so it's just hearsay, I guess, whatever she says. And so I had talked to Stephanie about this, and she had said there was not really much to do when they were on vacation. So this was the other side of like her saying they just kind of wanted to sit in the room. On the other hand, there wasn't much to do on the vacation anyways. Obviously, I wasn't there, and if you're a little low on cash, you can't really go out and do stuff on a vacation, so you're just kind of stuck in the room. It's like, wow, we're on a vacation, but we're just in the room. So it's pretty much like you don't really get it. You're just in the room, and you're like, well, I got to look out the window at the scenery, and that's about it. Sorry, I am currently sick. I went to a buffet, sort of, for my birthday, and I'm pretty sure I came back with some sort of illness. Not saying that was on the buffet, but it could have been people contact. And so, yeah. But they had gone, they had done that, and basically came back. This was a while ago, maybe even months before this. But there have been prior incidences where, or at least one prior incident that I've at least been told, where Julian has gotten it up in my friend's face, and and she's on the shorter side. Like I'm 5'9", and she's about maybe 5'5", maybe 5'6", 5'6". Obviously, not much shorter, but she's on the more frail side, maybe 100 pounds. Like right now, I'm probably sitting at 130, and she's a little bit more skinnier than me. So yeah, she's like 100 pounds at most. And so obviously, you can't just go up and say you want to beat somebody. From what I understand, or at least from what I can pick apart, this was, at least the one image I showed was over a call when he had basically been shitting on her because they had gone on a vacation that they didn't want to go to. They probably didn't, but if you didn't, you could have easily said no. I just don't like him because I think he is a mooch, and I think that it was worth it to go up and say something. As I've been told, could have done something off the clock because then it wouldn't have affected my job, or I could have just let it go. But at the end of the day, I care for my friend. Can I say that it was worth it? I think it was worth it. Did I lose my job over it? Yes. But now here's where it comes into, what do you think? Do you think that what my job did was right? Do you think firing me because I had an altercation with the worker and this was 1 month after the previous incident with the carts, you think that was a good enough reason? A lot of people whom I've worked with, there were a few new, few that have been there for a couple of years, who don't think it was right, who think I should have been kept on because I've been working there for almost 3 years. Like, I have legitimately been there for a long time, and to some of them, they were kind of shocked that it's been 3 years. Like, tell me about it. I'm shocked myself that it's almost been 3 years. I am now 19 as of September 14th, and that was maybe a Thursday or Friday. I don't even know. It was somewhere during the week. I don't think it was a weekend. But basically, I got fired around my birthday, so good way to start off being 19. So I just want to know: do you think I was wrongfully fired, or do you think they were like, yeah, that's perfectly reasonable? I personally don't think I should have been fired. I think there are many other people who should have been fired a long time ago and have not been fired. And that's where I come to the second half. So if you were just here for the first half, you're welcome to leave. If you want to stick around for the second half, basically lazy people on the job, kind of what I had to go through, at least the time period, is obviously over 3 years. During my first year, it was like Ghost. I was just there, and like I was just doing my job. Over towards the half point of the second year and the third, that's when obviously I'm getting older. I'm realizing more things. I'm using my eyes more, and I'm not just working at this point. I'm just kind of monitoring other people alongside doing my job. Because what else am I supposed to do? There are some points when it's not busy, and then there's some points where it are. And that's where I'm going to put in that our store should probably be paid more. I think any job where you are doing the same thing as another place, but you're working harder, you should have to be paid more. Because there are other stores that aren't nearly as busy as our store, and yet we're getting paid the same. I'm sure there might be a store or two that are busier than our store, and obviously I think they should be paid more. I think if you do a job that requires you to work harder than another store, like, you should be paid more. But that's just me. I think the cart pushers should be paid more. Not specifically the ones that are terrible at their job, but they should make the position be paid more so they could attract people who actually want to do the job. Their whole reasoning for not doing that is, one, it's an entry level position, and two, it's for people who are the age of 16, 17, obviously just starting, which I think is kind of bull. I think you should still give the position more money. I don't care if it's a starting position or not. If it requires you to go out in the heat, in storms, when it's snowing, in the cold, wind, you should be paid more because you have to work in a manual labor environment. Because going out there, if I put in my all, I want to be paid more. So later I can actually afford to eat a decent meal so that way I can recover from the work and so that way I'm doing better the next day. Or just overall, I'm not degrading my body as I'm working. So, with the car pushers in mind, I started just based off my first year. I think on my first year, I had already gone out maybe a month or two in, maybe even sooner. All I know is it could have been within a couple month period or it could have been close to maybe weeks. But obviously that could equal up to a month. So let's say 1 to 2 months before I'd actually gone out. Inside, I hadn't received a lot of training. For me, I believe this is a job where you, no matter how much training you have, you're going to have a situation where you don't know what you're doing. You're going to have a customer come up with a completely different card, and it's going to be completely different than the one that didn't work yesterday. And so it could be a totally different reason now, whether they have no money, or whether it's the card reader, or whether you have to insert 3 times and then swipe. Because sometimes the readers just don't want to take it. Now, whether that's the quality of the card or the reader itself, I have no idea. But when it comes to working there, there's a lot of different stuff. There's a lot of different things. There's stuff that involves certain registers, and obviously the registers are changing now. So over the years, this could become different. But there was like a whole specific register just for these slips from, I believe, like the schools or it was like the government or something that basically said you can buy like this amount of clothing, like $200 worth of clothing. You go to this certain register to do it. And so obviously If you get that, like let's say you get it like a few months ago and then now you get it, you're not going to know how to do it because you might have forgotten because it's been like months since you last did that type of transaction. Which you have to go into like training mode, you have to do tax exempt, I believe now. I don't think originally we did that because I think the system was put in, but they're just like, we just do it now. I don't know because things change all the time at Walmart. A lot of things change from stuff that we're told. So we've got more self checkouts now than we did with registers. I think we have about the same amount of registers we had before. Originally, they were just these long belts, and they had pretty much the impulse section in each lane. So it's like you go into a lane, there's impulse on the side of you all the time. And it's still like that now, but the belts are about the same size, but it's not a whole aisle's length. It's like the belts here, and then the stuff's on like the side. And there's like gaps in between. So we like kind of staggered them. So it made it more efficient. It put all the registers in a more compact area, which of course compacts the people, but we have more self-checkouts. Now the problem with that being is we have to have one person per 4 self-checkouts. Now this wasn't always a thing, and it changes from time to time. Depending on how busy it is, this changes. This rule changes. If it's one person to 4 self-checkouts, sometimes it might be 1 to 8. Or they're just like, you know what, go run it because they don't have people to run it. They don't have people to run it. And here you are firing a semi decent person and keeping these other people who aren't that great. But you had to have what the rule was 1 to 4, but it wasn't always 1 to 4 because obviously you have to still watch these self checkouts because even if people are considered trustworthy, not always are they trustworthy. You're always going to get those few people who aren't trustworthy. Originally, at some point, there was a rule like 10 under or like 15 under, like you can only have a certain amount. Oh, great, load disk space. But you can only have a certain amount of items. But people complained, and that got changed, and so now you can bring a whole basket in. When there's a whole basket in there, you have to watch that for like the next 5 to 8 minutes. You have to watch other things and help other things that are happening, like age checks and stuff like that. Or if people want to take stuff back, you have to put it in the bin. Or if it's cold, frozen, that can still go back. You're supposed to take it to the front so somebody can run it. Not everyone does that, and that is one of the things that makes me really angry. Is that not everyone will take their stuff back. They'll just set this nice cold piece of meat in the bottom of the bin and then set clothing on top of it. Great work, great work. I understand that that might not be something that you're like, oh yeah, let me do that. And while yes, I have put cold stuff in the bins too, I'm not totally exempt from this, but for the most part, I try and remember take it up there, or at least keep it out of the bin. Take it up to the front if it's cold enough to go back, because don't set it in the bin, or else you're going to get the meat juices all over everything else and the bin itself. And not always are the bins wiped down. I don't know what morning crew does, but that is one of the main like whole things is we don't like morning crew because as closing shift you have to clean up everything in the front end. You have to make sure everything is ready for the next day. Yet morning crew doesn't leave anything ready for the night crew. They'll leave boxes of random stuff, whether it's grab and go material or 82s. They'll just leave it all in a box and say, "Yep, do it, guys." Now, whether they're saying actually do it or not, or they're just saving it there, it's still there by the end of the day. Or at some points, we'll end up taking some of the stuff back, or we'll move it to the side and be like, look, morning crew, you left this, you got to do it. But back to registers. So we've been told that obviously the 1 to 4 rule, obviously these weren't always the case. It was like 2 people in like a round circle area because it was originally just they were kind of stacked around. It wasn't like they are now to where they're in different rows. It was just in like a circle, and then they come in and then they go out. So they kind of pass through this like half cut circle type deal. And so usually there was 2 there. Sometimes there was 1, and mainly the people that always had 1 were people like me, or they knew who were doing their job because they knew that there were others that just didn't, or that they couldn't trust them enough to do it properly. Because obviously you have to know when something is okay and something is not okay. Let's take a price check, for example. You have to go up and see what the item is. You have to first check. You have to like check and see how much the item price is. You have to see if there's any clearance tags on there. And some people just be like, yeah, I'll just give it to them. And then some people won't. Or some people, like let's say they bought multiple clothing items, they'll price check all of them down when you're only supposed to do 1 at most. If they're ever buying a bunch of items, like let's say it's like a $20 item and they come up with like 10 of them and they're like $5 each, or at least they're saying they're clearance for 5, but they're still ringing up as 20. You can't do it for all of them, or at least you shouldn't. You should only do it for 1 because that's a lot of money loss for $1 million company or $1 billion. I don't know how much Walmart's worth. Probably millions or billions of dollars, but it might not be a lot, but it adds up, and obviously that can affect products later on, like what the store purchases itself, or even what the bonuses are. Because originally, when I started working, bonuses were off the table. 3 years later at my store, they were just now announcing bonuses. That's something I don't get to see. And it was maybe like going to be 500. I don't know if that's true or not. it's based off how well the store does, how well you do, apparently. I don't know if that's actually true or not, because, like, obviously that's, you know, are they really going to put in that much effort for it? Probably not if they're letting people just mooch or mosey around and sit around all day and talk with one another instead of doing their job. So obviously they're not paying attention good enough, or they're just not doing anything about it. So, with that being said, for the self checks, we have been told as night crew, this is more recent, that when it's during our time of the day, we are supposed to just have all the registers open and none of the self checks. Now, when you get there as a midday person to, I guess, evening, or a closing shift, I guess you could say, day crew doesn't do that. They'll leave the self checkouts open. Now, one of the things that irks me is my team lead. She's an elderly woman. She's about, I wouldn't say too, like, she's not that old. She can still function. And she does her job pretty damn well. She's been working for Walmart for maybe 20 to 30 years. She's been there a long fucking time. She deserves to be paid more and treated well and not be one of the only team leads to be there almost every single day. There are other team leads. I don't mind the team leads. There are some that I like more than others, but there are some that just aren't there. She is there almost every single day. She's a hardworking woman. She puts the work in. And she has been yelled at for not having all the registers open. Now, I don't know about you, but when it comes to a busy day, having the self checkouts open really helps. Like, let's say you get a worker in. Let's say you get one worker. Would you rather put this worker on a belt that he can work himself, or would you rather put him on a self checkout and have him open four of those up? I'd rather have four of those be open because I can tell you with how slow some of the other checkers are that yes, I'd rather have them on a self check. I'm not saying I'm god tier speed, but I have always been fast. I've always had a good scan rate up at least 1,000 to 1,300, which is like maybe 12 items a minute, I believe. And it times that by like 60, and that's how you get it. It's like 11 or 12 items per minute. That's decently fast in comparison to people going like deep, deep. I was like bringing them through as fast as I could. Over that time period, I didn't have a lot of incidents or a lot of accidents. Or if I had a misscan, I would always click the error correct. Like I use the little keyboard on the side. They don't have that now, at least in my store, so that's kind of fucking sucks because I really liked having that. Granted, I wanted new registers, which they're not really doing. The screens are the exact fucking same thing. They just ripped off the little keypad, which kind of fucking sucks. Been here for 35 minutes, so that's good. At least I got that first 15 minutes in. But we have been told as night crew that you have to have all the registers open. But morning crew isn't expected that same of. Morning crew could just do whatever they want, and night crew has its own thing. One of the other things is with card pushing again, because as you know, as I've said, I have gone out there and I have pushed cards before. Now, with the third year coming up, we had gotten some new workers in. Some because obviously workers come and go, new faces, and a couple of these were male, and so they were like, let's send them out because there was one night where it was just me and one other guy, and there was like 8 women there. Like there was like, where was the guys at? Like there were like very few. I'm assuming that's to a lot of men not wanting to work. I don't know. I can say I'm partially a lazy person. When I'm at home, I just kind of sit around. But when I'm at work, I try and do my best. Like without work, I just have nothing to do at home. Like I'm just here. I either game or I decide, let's record a video as I nudge that. But recently we had hired a new guy, and he's a team lead. I don't think he was originally team lead, but he's a team lead now. But he's maybe 6'5", African American. He's like maybe 250ish. He's not obese. Like let's put it that way. He's an actual decently fit guy. He's maybe in his mid 30s. He has a daughter and I believe a wife. I don't know if he has any other kids or not. I could assume so. I believe he was a music teacher for some time because he does sing on the job sometimes, and honestly, it brings up the mood. Being night shift is honestly one of the greatest things because you get to close with a lot of people, and there are a lot of people I like. There are also a lot of people I hate. But he tore his Achilles heel. Or Achilles tendon? Yeah, Achilles heel. Achilles tendon before he had gotten the job. I don't know how much before, but he was still in the recovery period when he joined. And whenever we had gotten pulled to go push carts, because they started wanting night crew to go out and clean up after the car people. And I don't think that is okay. Like, while yes, there are some moments where I'm like, yes, I'm working and I want something else to do. Let me go out and do carts. But at the same time, when they expect you to have the lot cleaned every single night, so that way, like people who are there for like the late midnight shift to like 6 in the morning, so that way they don't have to go out and do it. Which I don't even know why they have to go out and do it. But honestly, I don't see why they're complaining. I honestly understand what doesn't get done from the car pushers gets pushed onto the front end, and what doesn't get done from the front end gets pushed onto the night crew. Like, I understand that. That obviously sucks because if you have things like a two truck night, you're not going to get to that. which that shouldn't be the case. I don't know why it's degraded so much over the years, but we've never had this issue until year number 3. And I think that's with the lack in quality of the car pushers. Sometimes they're just not there. There are moments when there will be moments when they call in. Granted, they are decent, but this is when they're on their own and not working with their friends. If they are working alongside people they know, they will talk all the time. They will sit in the garage. They will not do their job. They will not be productive because they are talking with somebody they know, and that could be like a talking for like 5 minutes and going out and grabbing carts. In that 5 minutes, there could be a lot of carts grabbed from that garage and put out on the lot. Like 5 minutes is quite a bit of time, especially with a really busy store. With a non-busy store, that 5 minutes of carts being taken might be even halved because there's just not as many people going in and out. With our store, there's quite bit of people going in and out. There are days when it's a little bit slower, and there are days when it's a bit faster. But that just depends. And holidays and days of the week, and obviously if it's summer or not, that all goes into being how busy it is. But there have been moments where I have been sent out to push carts and a few others, and he himself, the team lead, has decided to come out and help because he doesn't want a staff to do something that he won't do himself. He's more of an on hands. I love it. He's amazing. He wants to actually go out and help. Now, I can't say that any of the other team leads are super capable. Yet, the one team that I was saying that was about maybe age 50-ish, I believe 55 to 56-ish, maybe. She has gone out and still pushed a little bit. Whether it's not a lot, but she is obviously a bit older. But she has still gone out and pushed. And that's more than I can say for a lot of the others. And there aren't many others. There's a few. And she is there almost all the time. Now, when we over that like maybe 2 or 3 week period when the new team lead joined, he could already see flaws in different spots, and he was already opening his third eye, which that took me almost 2 years to open to see how shitty some of the people were at doing their jobs or things that weren't right, things that shouldn't be done. Like we shouldn't have to go back from front end. We shouldn't have to send somebody back to cover electronics. They should have somebody back there to do that. They should have at least 2 people per day. If they don't have somebody to hire for that, they need to hire. But that's the problem. They don't want to hire, or at least they don't want to hire people who are going to be there full time. They put in schedule change before I leave where they're now having designated schedules, and I'm guessing it's to push out part timers, though I'm not sure because obviously I'm not there, so I can't say what's going to happen. But they had changed the schedule to where you could pick. For closing shift, it was either 3 to 11 or was it 3 to 11:30? It was either 3 to 11:30 or 3 to 11 and then 2:30. We had to be out by 12. Originally, we had to be out by 12, but now we have to be out by before 12. I think it's 11:30 or 11. I don't know. But now they want to get us out of there quicker. Now, that obviously makes for a problem, and I'll get into that after the cart pushing. So basically, he'd gone out, he'd helped push carts with us. And we had been doing this for maybe a few weeks, maybe almost a month or so. And this is when Night Crew started to shit on him. They had basically said he couldn't keep the lot as clean as the other team lead. Now, these two people, so obviously the older team lead, and there's an older gentleman who works with Night Crew. They have a sort of relationship going on, and I think that's what makes him have a soft spot for her and not for the new team lead. But that doesn't give you any reason to go over the radio and say, oh, I guess it must be his night because the lot's not clean. Saying that there are moments when she gets the lot clean better than he does are false. There have been moments, because obviously I worked almost every single day besides Fridays and Saturdays. And so I'm there, like I got lucky with my time, but to say that and say that he can't get it done like she can is just false because there are moments where we've had it cleaner than she has. Now, I'm not saying this is her fault, but what I am saying is that Night Crew needs to learn to get the stick up out of their ass and not treat people differently based on how well the lot is done. It shouldn't matter. What needs to be said is we need more car pushers. We need not just more in general, but more that are willing to stay later so they can get it fully done. If you can't get somebody who wants to stay later, then you need to start paying the spot more so you can do that. I don't care if you want it just to be for 16, 17-year-olds. If I was 16 and 17 and I saw that they were paying $20 an hour for car pushing, I want to go do that. But that's also where you need to watch and say, hey, if you're sitting on your ass for 15 minutes straight and you're not on a break or a lunch, you need to get your butt in gear and actually be working. Because one of the whole things is you're supposed to be fit or be able to do the job when you're out there doing it. And I can guarantee, and I can tell you this right now, that there are people we have pushing carts that are not fit enough to be out there. Now, I can say that this is a perfect opportunity to lose weight or to work out or use it as a workout excuse. I told my mother that would be great. And she's like, well, if they made it for paid you 20 an hour, I would gladly work out there. Like, I would too. Because I know I'm already decent at pushing carts. And so, yes, I would go out there and do it if they were paying 20 an hour. For 15, no, because I have to put up with less inside somewhat than I do have to outside. So, New team lead being shit on by night crew. I don't think it's right. I think obviously that needs to be reported because they don't get to just say whatever they want over their walkies. And he had even put in, like, right before we leave, he'd be like, night crew's leaving. He'd give them the sit rap. He'd tell them what everything was like. He'd pretty much be like, this is the condition of this, front end shut down, cart lot, the lot is looking okayish tonight. And he'd say, have a nice night. And yet they have the audacity to treat him like shit. He no longer does that. At least I'd hope he no longer does that from this point on because that is just bullshit. You don't get to just shit on the front end crew for having to get that done. Because now, when we have to leave by 11:30, you can no longer do that because the store closes at 11. After COVID, that is when it stopped being 24 hours, and we closed at 11. I started working after COVID, so for the time I've worked there, it has always been. I think I started working there, yeah, a little bit after, but it had been but it had started closing at that time. It started closing at 11. Now there are other stores that have apparently guards that will like enforce the time the store closes, but our store does not really enforce it. We just say, "Hey guys, store's closing in 15 minutes," and then once that 15 minutes is up and it's 11, we still have like 5 people in the store. Obviously, at different times of, I guess, different days of the week, that's going to be different. I don't know if it's going to be cracked down upon, but when you have people staying in with full carts, like 5 to 10 minutes after that, it makes it really hard for us to be able to close down at 11 or at 11:30 and get out of the store because we still have to now pull those tills that they were using. Those tills that they were at, they or the registers they were at, those tills have to be pulled, and then they have to be put into the cash has to be collected and taken and counted and all that, which takes a good couple minutes. And so that obviously takes time away from doing anything else because if a customer is in there past the time they should be, that makes it to where we now have to have a worker on that. And when it comes to being that late, we have like 5 people at most, maybe a little bit less. It just depends on the night. So it could be like 5 people, maybe even four to three. I'd say it's maybe four. It's about 4 to 5. Like it's always around that. Sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less. And there are days when you'll go in and there will just be nobody during the midday and it's chaotic as shit. Because there have been moments where I've gone in and it has been chaotic as fuck. So from rules changing, like rules change a lot. Like I get it, but I don't even think they changed that much in the last like before any of that. Of course, was I paying attention all that much? No, I was just there for my job. But as I started gaining my third eye and my Walmart stare, I was starting to pay attention to more of the stuff. And so maybe things had changed rule wise throughout that, and I just forgot or I just wasn't paying attention. But like some of the stuff is set isn't it's nothing set in stone. That's like a lot of what night crew had to do, a lot of what our duties were changed a lot. Like what we were told we had to do and what other places were told they had to do. Like a lot of the big things were go backs. When I come into the store to start working, usually there was like a bunch of stuff in the go back bins. And go backs are when people leave stuff, whether it's returns or stuff they don't want to purchase, and this could range from cold stuff like frozen, fresh stuff that has to obviously be tossed out now because they left their meat in their cart while they were shopping, and then they're like, you know what, I don't want this, and so now that meat is done. It has to go and get tossed. It has to get claimed. Like that whole ribeye you wanted, that like 3-4 pound ribeye is gone. It's gone now. It's wasted because you decide to grab that first while shopping, and then say, oh, don't want that now. So yeah, whether that could be milk, yogurt, other frozen stuff, that all had to get thrown away at the end of the night. Like, and this obviously could increase depending on how much people at the self checkouts or even registers were bringing up their things. In between customers, you can easily say, hey, it'll just be 1 second. I'm going to go run these up there. These are still cold enough to go back, and we might have somebody who can put these back. And that's not always the case. There are times when we get slammed and there's nobody, and the go backs were not being done. And that is when every crew in the back or like their different areas have been told, hey, you got to come up and grab your stuff because it's just spilling over out of the boxes. And not always would they do that. We have been told that we shouldn't have to go over the intercom and say, hey, we need you in your areas. You guys got to come grab your stuff. And that this should just be something they do. And obviously that changes. And now, at least from what I know, is that we don't have to take the boxes back. We don't have to one touch. Which is when we take all those items, put them in cardboard boxes, and we take them back to the areas, and we just set them there. And then the night crew does those. We no longer have to do that, which takes a good couple of minutes. Whether it's actually physically sorting, but actually taking the boxes back and putting them in their areas, could take like 5-10 minutes, depending on how fast of a walker you are. Not everyone's as fast as walking. And also, you're carrying like maybe 20 pounds, maybe 30 pounds behind you. Obviously, not a lot, especially when it's on a cart. But I guess at times when it's busy, it's a bit harder, but during later at night, not always as busy. There are times when it is, like at least checkout wise, not in the aisles wise, which comes to another thing of taking back just carts of, I guess, food. Like this isn't spoiled food, but it's food and just going and taking it back, which was another thing we did for quite some time, was where we had a cart for food and we'd take the items, put them in our cart, we'd sort them, and then we'd take them back. Now we don't have to do that. Now we put those in boxes, so we have to sort those. But it's like front end is where everything goes. If you've ever gone to a Target, I don't know if this is all Targets, but I went to a Target and they need somebody to put back go backs. Like there are just carts upon carts of just clothing and like toys, and that is insane. Like if you don't want to buy something, you should not be like buying it. Like you shouldn't put it in your cart. If you know you can't afford it, don't put it in your cart. If you're ever questioning, well, I only have like $200, and you have this cart full of shit, don't take what's needed and go. Don't try and underestimate how much it costs, because at the end of the day there's taxes and it's going to cost more than you think. Like I cannot tell you how many times people come in and they're like, man, I came in for like 2 items and I came out with like 20 things, 30 things, and it's like $200. Yeah. Now don't go to Macy's. If you got all those items at Macy's, you'd probably be spending around the same. Granted, they don't have stuff like clothing and things like that, which can obviously bring down the purchase total. But generally, Walmart's cheaper. Not that much cheaper, but it's cheaper, at least food-wise. I don't think Macy's has clothing, unless they do. Maybe there are stores with clothing. But so over the maybe 2.5 to 3 year period, this is when I started noticing that one of the big issues was we had several workers who would be on, let's say, their register, and when there was nobody, they would walk from the register down like 3 registers over to talk with somebody. Now that is a big no-no. One of the things we're supposed to do is redline, which is stand at the end of our register, or at least at the end of the aisle, and wait for a customer, or to zone, which is, I guess, sorting, making sure, first of all, making sure there's nothing that shouldn't belong on your little uh, impulse buy little area, that there shouldn't be anything that's there, or at least it's sorted, looking nice, so it's presentable. So it's not like a kid just ran its hand through it and now everything's knocked on the ground or in its wrong spot. Like you're supposed to at least sort that somewhat. Now on busier days that's not going to happen, but there are moments when I've gone and taken over for somebody and there was just shit scattered along their thing. Now I try not to leave stuff scattered on mine like that the best I can. I will go and check as often as possible. I could say that when it comes to how busy it is, not always is it possible. And I hate how people will put them on there. It's like, dude, bring it up to me. I don't know if you're scared or something, but bring it up to the person at the register. That is the best thing you could do. If you leave it wherever you want to, it's not going to do anything for us. It's going to make it harder because if we can't get to it, it's now sitting there. And if it's something cold or it's something like meat and you put it in that little fridge, that's not going to keep it safe for long. Not only that, but now you're contaminating potential drinks. So you're getting like potential meat juice on other things. But back to how workers would sit there and they would go and just talk with their friends. Now, this could be when it's not busy or when it is busy. This would happen almost every single day, and it's always the same few. There's always like these 4 or 5 people, whether it's different points in the week and different ones are there, but they would always do it. They would always walk over and talk. And they're around my age. They're obviously teens. These aren't older people. They're teens, and they just have no ability to stand in their aisle or walk back and forth, and they have to talk to somebody. They have to. I feel like they're fiending. Like I feel like they would start itching if they couldn't talk to somebody, because that is how often they do it. And they've been told before to not do that. Now, this is where it comes into, why aren't they fired yet? Why haven't they been written up? I had at least 2 write-ups on my record. One was for my phone and one was for my earbud. The reason being for the phone is during that time I had gotten Discord. It was a bit after I got in Discord. And I had met some people online, and one of these people has unfortunately passed. They passed like maybe a year ago. It's been that long. But during my, I guess, first year and a half is when I started contacting them, and there were moments when I was worried for them, and I tried keeping in touch. Like I got distracted. Like let's just put it that way. I got distracted, and I got written up for that. Earbuds, I had used my earbud in, at least I'd always put one in. I would never use two. I still never use two. As you can see, I love to have one off. I never do, or like if I have an earbud here because I'm like using Discord now because it's not possible to use my laptop and game for some reason. Still not. I don't know why, but I always try to have, even if I'm just gaming normally, I try to just have one in because you can't hear that well. So I've always have one in because it drowns out, or at least gives music so the time passes. Just like turn it down a little bit, have it as low as possible so you can still hear. Obviously with an earbud in, you still can't always hear as well. Like it's just going to happen. Especially if you have one of the fancy ones that obviously have noise canceling. That's going to have more of an effect. Obviously this is a cheap $20 pair. Not a lot of noise canceling unless it does have noise canceling. Not sure. But I would have it in. And at some point I got called upon. I was like, hey, we're going to have to write you up for it because you keep putting your earbud in. And look, when it comes to the end of the day, for some time I still did so because it's towards the end of the day. There's not nearly as many customers, and it gets boring. There are sometimes it gets boring. There's sometimes I'm still a little bit heavy on the customers, but there are sometimes when it gets boring. And at the end of the day, you just want to listen to some music because you've been there for a good couple hours, and you're like, look, I want to go home now. Like I like working. I at least want to be able to work. I would work all day if possible, if I could do so, just to make money because like I have nothing to do when I'm at home. It's either gaming, sitting down, and that's a lot of what it comes down to. Like I don't always go out and hang out because obviously that costs money. And if you're trying to pay for bills, you want to get a car at some point. You have a phone you're paying for, which I didn't get a phone until I could afford a phone. So yeah, I like when I first started YouTube, that is around the time I first got my own phone. Like it took like I had got my first job and that's how I got my Nintendo Switch. That's how I got that. But back to the workers that aren't paying, like aren't listening. They've been told many times. There are times when I've watched and a team lead has come over, said something like, "Hey, go back to your spots." They walk back over. When the team lead walks away, they'd immediately walk back. Why are these people still here and not fired yet? Is what I want to know. Why are they still there and not fired? Why are people who don't know how to do their job or who are there to just slack off not fired yet? There is one in particular named Sunny. Now, sorry if I'm wiping my eyes. It is like 9, almost 9:10 in the morning. I got up at like 8:30. Obviously, with this lighting and staring at a screen, it kind of hurts. Okay, my eyes are not built for this somehow yet, or at least they haven't had time to adjust, and so now they're suffering. But there's one particular name, Sunny. He's about maybe 300, maybe 400 pounds. He can still walk. I'll give him that. He's about around the 6 foot range, maybe 6'5" range. A little bit, not too tall, but obviously, like when you get up to that height, it's like, oh yeah, 6 foot life. Like it's around that range. But he was inside for some time. Now this guy, he likes to wear shorts. He doesn't really wash. That's all I'm gonna say. It doesn't look like he washes. Like he'll come into work. He has kind of messy hair. He's no longer working at Walmart, which is good. He wasn't working there a good bit before, but he had worked inside for some time. Then he gone out and pushed carts. Now he used the mule a lot, and the mule is a machine that allows you to push more carts. Now the way they were using the mules is they would stuff it into the corral. Now the corrals are a little bit tight, so like when they take the mule, it'd be like clanking through, like hitting stuff. Like you're allowing this machine to like this creates a potential danger of it like you not clicking the button fast enough and it tapping something or hitting something. And this allows you to maybe push like 20. It could realistically probably push 30 or so carts, maybe more if like if it was just like a straight line, it could most definitely push that. Like it's not super difficult, like it could do it. But for a comparison, I would push like maybe around 15, maybe 20ish in some rows. I could probably push like 25, 30ish if I wanted to. Like if there were no, like if it was late at night, I could definitely push that much without fear of hitting a cart. For the longest time, I never really used a rope. And a lot of other people, like over the year, like this was when I first starting, like I never really used a rope. People would push the carts totally different until I started pushing it a certain way. Everyone comes up with a new way to push the carts. Like that's what I've noticed is that they've drifted off towards like putting a strap over and pulling it over your shoulder. That is not effective as getting behind it and getting full control or staying in front of it, making it or steering it. It's just not as great. Like you don't have nearly as much control over it as you do doing it those two other ways. So it's very ineffective. And that obviously changed over time. But Sonny, he would be out there pushing carts, but he wouldn't do that great. During his time pushing carts towards about maybe his half life, I guess, towards when it started to, he started being more like watched and surveyed, there would be moments where he like passed out. Now, I can't say how real or fake this was, but like, did it put on a show? Kinda. Like, if you are in the position of going out and pushing carts and you have moments where you'll pass out, this was like 2 times. Now, maybe 2 or 3. But this was no issue, at least not that I was aware of when he first started. For like the first month or so, there was no issues. And that's what makes it strange. I don't know if there was any moments before when he passed out, but these are the ones that I noticed or heard about. And so that's what makes me think, like, what is making you pass out? Now, they do provide water. There was water in bins of ice. Oh my God. I'm dying. But there was water in these like coolers. And one of these coolers actually got melted at some point due to a car pusher leaving the heater fan near it. There has been destroyed equipment. They have destroyed at least 3 heater fans. They're gone. They destroyed them. They hit them with carts. They sat there, left it next to the cooler, and it melted the cooler. It melted a corner of it. They destroyed that. Like it was still usable, but man, was that stupidity to leave that heater fan near it. They've also recently, before I was let go, they got in these like storage cupboard things. One of the doors is ripped off one. I don't know if the guy ripped it off or he hit it, but it's off. It's not on there no more. I don't understand how they could treat equipment like that, or they could destroy the equipment. It's like if you can't use it properly without destroying it, you shouldn't be using it at all. But Sonny basically didn't do his job, quite lazy, and he was also one of the people who we were sure of was time thefting. There would be moments when he would be like he'd get home or he'd get back like 30 minutes after his hour lunch, or like even there was moments where he'd even get back 2 hours when it's supposed to be only 1 hour, like 2 hours. I'm sure he spat out reasoning for that, but like going in and changing. But the problem where the time theft comes is he would go in and he would change it. This guy was always on the computer behind the front desk. He was always there, always changing something. The only times I ever changed something or anybody else changed something was they're like, hey, team lead, I need you to come over here. I need this. They would like let somebody know. They would either get it changed by somebody or let somebody know like, hey, I just did this right here. Like basic little things. But he was always on it, almost always. And that should be already looked at for concern. But he was never fired. He was never let go. I'm pretty sure he ended up quitting. He either quit or he was fired. I don't even know. But this was such a long period of time when that was happening, and he never got written up for that. Or there's always excuses. Julian, he is mouthy. There have been moments where I've been told by a teammate that yes, he would come in and he would get all huffy and pissed because he was being told how to do his job. Yes, when you sit on your ass for 15 minutes doing nothing, you're going to be told how to do your job. Like that's just the way it goes. You can't expect to sit around and do nothing and not be told what to do. Like there are just plenty of other lazy workers who don't do their job, who are unreliable, and yet we keep them on. And that's why I come into my conclusion of, look, I understand the reason being I was fired because there were two incidents too close together, but there are plenty of workers who should have been fired a long time ago, and whether they've been written up or not, or looked into or not, they should be. They should be removed. You should get other workers and trade them in for those because they are just not doing their job properly. They are not there to do their job correctly. They are there to make the money and slack off whenever they can. And it makes me mad because, yes, I'm a lazy person when it comes to being at home, but when I'm at my job, I will try my best. I will put in my best for as long as possible until I eventually daze off and I'm just done for the night. But I do it. Like, I was there. I was there for as much as possible. I was there almost every single day. Like, sure, not on Friday and Saturday, which is the busiest days from what I know. I was putting in effort almost 3 years, and you choose to fire me. I guess you have to have a reason for it, but at the same time, all these people have things that need to be looked into or watched or written up for, and they're not. Like, as far as I know, they're not. And that makes me a little bit angry. And so, if you think I was wrongfully fired and you have stuck through all this jibber jabber for the last hour and 7 minutes, I'd like to thank you, first of all, and say, do you think it was right? Do you think that Walmart needs to obviously crack down on some of these things? Like, I get it, it's an entry level position, but if you're willing to fire people for dumb reasons and then not fire the people who are legitimately taking up a whole space for a worker and not doing their job properly, not putting in the effort, like, is it fair? Do you think it's fair? If you've got your own stories that you'd like to tell, please put in the comments. If you got questions, let me know. Like, let me know what you think. Sorry for this not being a gaming video. I'm just gonna kind of do a voice critical instead. That's all, folks, or that's all I got for you. Yeah. But hopefully you all have a wonderful day, or at least wonderful night, wonderful day. Hopefully you enjoy this. This was not clickbait. I am actually fired. So I'm gonna call the ethics number. I'm gonna put in my complaints and concerns and see if I can get the store looked into because it's not right. Have a good one, guys.